basically community contributed data sets, contributed or collated, the participation of community in releasing their data sets. We have our chairman with us, Professor Sarbadhikari, who's our Chief Data Officer from National Institute of Health and Family Welfare. I welcome you, sir, to the dais and request you to please conduct the session, please.
I'm honored to be here. I think Madam is one of the panelists. Mr. D.P. Misra is another one. Ms. Nisha Thomson, Sri Sumandro Chattopadhya, and Ms. Malini Chakravarty, please join us on the dais. I think we have had a very interesting day full of discussion on quite a varied issues, and although many of the issues are still open, but at the final session of the long day, we are trying to find some answers to a very pertinent question, which I believe pertains to all of you. Community, what is the role of community providing data, which can also be shared through an open data platform from the Government of India. So maybe I'll start from the right. So I'll ask Mr. Mishra to set the ball rolling.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Sarbadhikari. This is regarding the data which our community and even different private agencies and civil society agencies, they generate maybe out of government funding or maybe out of their own interest, or maybe for social cause, maybe for international funding. So those data pertaining to India perspective, and many of you have asked us to provide a platform so that they can host those data and they can publish those data in open format. So in that context, we try to put it up on the task force of our open data task force. There we are advised to form a committee to discuss this issue and come out with a framework where public can come and contribute the data, and somebody will be publishing the data. It will be there and it is open for public to rate whether this data is worth be there published or not. If there is no merit, then even automatically those can be out of the site. So some kind of mechanism and framework we need to put it up. That is the mandate given to this committee. So for this panel discussion, I will just put some questions. There is no answer to those questions. I don't have. So just to discuss on those points, I am just thinking. So what should be the structure of the framework that we are going to do as a mandate of this committee? So who are the entities who can be enrolled for data publishing? And what would be the benchmark for the quality of data, and how to ensure the quality data is coming out for public consumption? And what should be the process of contribution or publishing those data? And data gathering mechanism and methods, is it making any relevant that how this data has been collected by these and private entities, who they want to publish? So should there be any license under which this data be released? Will this license be of a government license or any prevailing license available? Something to this sort we need to deliberate. And on entities, if you see, so who can be a contributor to the data? Maybe will it be a community, or can it be a civil society, or academia, industry, or individuals? Individuals means you may say of a researcher maybe. He has gathered and put a lot of efforts to collect data. After his dissertation or maybe thesis is complete, he wants to publish that data maybe. So can he publish? So how to ensure the quality of data, whether this data should be certified by the contributor that I am putting a good quality data, what process he has adopted to collect this data. Do these be a part of metadata while contributing the data? So these are all the aspects that we need to discuss. And at the time of, once the data is published, should that be subjected to public review whether this data is good or not worth to be published. So another aspect is, suppose the data is out and somebody wants to use the data and there are some queries on this data. So some public queries that how this data and whatever, some maybe on parameters or maybe some process, maybe quality, somebody asks if that entity is supposed to answer to these queries. So should this be there be any precondition that if somebody is ready to answer to public queries, so should that be a criteria, or anybody can put then forget? Another thing is, what is the process of our workflow for publishing the data? And at some places, if you see, there are multi-location entities are there, where these entities have their independent setup at different geography of the country. So they have the privilege of taking money or their funding from maybe international organization or Indian government funding. So they suppose they want to publish themselves. So should there be any level of hierarchy maintained in that workflow itself, whether they should report to their headquarters, and headquarters should know, because the name and fame of this main entity is at stake. So should there be any association with their headquarters and head office and that local office? So that is one. Here in our data, government data, what we are doing, there is a 3 level. One is contribution by the department or government entity. Then there is a CDO, who is a Chief Data Officer responsible for the department. So he approves. Then it comes to our NDSAP Open Data PMO, who publishes the data. So there is a 3 level of authentication over here. So similar kind of setup should be there, or what? This is one question that. Another thing is the mechanism of data collection. Do we need to keep any metadata or something that what type of data if somebody has collected, then only it should be publicly placed in the portal, or anybody can put. So this is another aspect that we can discuss. Another is the license. So whatever data they are releasing, should there be any license, or is it relevant to this context or not? That also we can discuss. Thank you. So one by one we can discuss on these aspects.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. That was very informative. I think he has set the tone of the whole discussion. Maybe I'll start with the others. I think Sumandro already had actually responded to some of the queries in the previous panel. So I'll ask with Sumandro, I mean, some of the comments or rather questions and logistical issues he raised, what would be your response to that? How do we go ahead?
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mishra, thank you very much. You asked very difficult and very precise questions, and that's wonderful to happen in a panel discussion, especially in the last session of the day, because we have very clear things to talk about. Who should be included or allowed to publish? I would say that all of the above. Community, civil society, academia, industry, individuals. All of them should be allowed. The only difference, I think, comes in the way how to think about these different types of contributors of data, comes when you're thinking of the process workflow, right? I'll be very brief. I'm sure my colleagues will have more to add. How to, yes. Sir.
Can we discuss one by one? So
okay, perfect.
Let us discuss everybody, then we will go to the next one.
Okay, sir. All of the above. That's my answer.
Thank you. I'm Malini Chakravarty for Center for Budget and Governance Accountability. I'd like to thank NDSAP for inviting me to be part of this panel. As you can make out, we work with issues around the budget, and community contribution to data on budgets unfortunately cannot happen unless the government provides enough budget data. And that is where we face maximum problems. So, you know, in terms of who can contribute, I would say first, I think civil society, all these can contribute definitely, but if it's budget data that we're talking about, it has to come from the government first. So maybe the way we can contribute is something we can discuss. I mean, since we're just discussing this topic, I would say yes, of course, we can take contribution of everybody, but I think the government's contribution has to come first.
Government contribution is that
Yes, but that is what I'm saying, that, you know, since I'm talking about budget data, it cannot happen at any of the levels unless it is made available at the budget level. And the way it is now, you know, what happens is that budget data is available at the national level, at the state level, but the moment you go down to the state level, it is extremely difficult to cull out any information or do proper analysis, because the way it is presented across states, it keeps varying. So for a common person, and I'm not talking about people with technical expertise, for a common person to be able to understand budget data becomes difficult once they want to compare across states, because the formats are very different. And there's also another thing. There are a huge lot of difficult codings that are used. So, you know, maybe some of us can be able to, if I say the code 2202, some of us in the room would be able to understand this means, you know, revenue expenditure for education, but most won't be able to understand it. So the way the data is presented is extremely problematic. And second is, this I'm talking about states. The moment we go down to the lower levels of governance, data is simply not available. Whether it's district level, it's extremely scattered. Municipal level, extremely scattered. Locally relevant budget data, not available. So, you know, to be able to contribute, it is there with the government. It's just that it's not made public. So to be able to make contribution, I think the first step would have to be to put up the demand that please make it public.
Yeah, I think one of the things, let's be very clear. I mean, the questions are all interrelated, so maybe we should let the participants express themselves, because they're interrelated. Otherwise, when we come back, we'll lose the thread. So, Sumandro, would you like to continue? Then, okay. Nisha, can you just give brief comments on that? Then we'll come back. We'll discuss all these. Like this entities question, I think there's no doubt that anyone and everyone in the room would say all of the above. Yes. So there's no question. So let's, yeah, Nisha.
But sir, how do we
No, the structure, we'll come to that. We'll spend most time. In fact, that was exactly, I mean, what should be the format of the data, the structure of the data, how are we going to maintain the authenticity, validity of that? That's very important. We'll discuss, we'll give more time on that. But I think this, everyone would agree, all should be included. Yes, Nisha, you can.
Yeah, I think, again, everyone should be able to contribute. I think incentives for contribution should be explored as well. I think it's easy to create spaces for people to upload data. I think there's abundant amounts of spaces that do that, but creating incentive spaces for people to say, it is worth me uploading my data to this portal, is an important thing that should also be noted in this conversation. Also, in addition to that, it's really important to kind of look at quality of data can only really be assessed by the user of that data and how they're using that data. So it's very difficult for the platform to decide if that's good data or bad data. I would say for your sanity to not try to answer that, but again, that's for the larger discussion. Very deep requirements for methodology and how the data was collected and why the data was collected is very important. And a way to contact users who do download the data for feedback. Though in my personal experience, users will tell you why your data is bad without much pushing. So you might not need to spend too much money doing that. There are two ways I sort of look at it. There's like the social media model where it's like, we're just a platform, whatever you put up is just your business. We're not liable for it. I don't know if that is something the government is always comfortable with. Being open to a little bit of loss of control and understanding solid moderations of what's good interactions and good behavior will help you kind of deviate between creating communities that upload and share data and also trying not to control them too much, which will kind of not allow the thing to grow. And that's all I have for right now, actually. So
Thanks, Nisha, for raising a very pertinent point. In fact, that is, I think, one issue which we can probably discuss, which is not there in your list of questions. But what I felt from what Nisha said, and maybe many of you would agree, or probably most of you would agree, that the reliability of the data, or more importantly, the usability of the data. Whether, I mean, you can put any data up. I mean, now uploading and space constraints are not a problem at all. But whether it would be really useful to anyone at all. So for that, you really need a vibrant community of practice. In fact, even for the standards, I come from the standards domain, standards for health information exchange. There again, for most of the standards, there's a very vibrant community of practice. And really, they are the ones who drive, who go on force to improve the quality of the data. So probably it's not just uploading the data from the community per se, but also having some discussion forum linked to it so that we can really see whether which data is being useful or being used or better data is demanded. So I think market pressure, those things would come into play. I mean, peer-to-peer pressure. So, Madam, you'd like to add something? Then I'll come back there.
Sir, actually here I'm looking for some suggestions because basically we have been bombarded by our very important stakeholder community trying to say that they've collected a whole lot of data. They've scraped government websites only and got data. They've done number of projects in which they've collected the data, like pollution data for that matter. Though CPCB also has a huge pollution data, but unfortunately we've never been able to actually get them released on the portal. That could be maybe we could not connect with the chief data officer, or because of the limitation of our team or their limitation, I don't know. But the data has not really come into open. So now the thing is, we were just trying to deliberate that, okay, all agreed that this data should be there, the community data. How do we, not that we want to demarcate between a government source and a non-government source. Definitely we don't want to do that. But the thing is that how do we tell people that this data, to use the data, is left on your jurisdiction? This is actually collected by community. And second thing is, in case you need to talk anything about the data which was collected by the community, whom should they reach out to? And though we all agreed, sir, that any individual can also collect, but we need to have the process, like who is that individual who can collect, any XYZ or someone of some repute, then what is that repute, and things like that will have to be in place. So I know that one panel session is not enough, but again a committee has been set up and we expect to come up with some framework under which we personally feel it should be there, but not in the big bang way of opening it up to everyone. Start with only one or two aggregated community organizations, institutions, and then grow gradually.
Yes, thank you, Madam, for raising the very important issue. But I think now in the mainstream media, if you look at the TV journalism, citizen journalism has become a very cornerstone. And there it's individuals, absolutely non-accredited, non-entities, unknown people are actually giving big stories. It's a fact. And probably Twitter has actually replaced MSM for that. So social media is better than mainstream media. That's the debate of another panel. We leave it at that. But I think I'll come back to Malini. You want to continue where you left? Because we'll come into more things, and I definitely invite questions from you. So if you have queries, you can put down in a sheet of paper. You have the pencil and pad in front of you. You can pass it over to us. Then probably you can send it right now, I think there may be some volunteers, then we can actually respond to the questions, because I think that would really mean that this panel is meant for the community and not for just the government.
Okay, so where I left off is I made it very clear that, since I'm talking about budget data, one cannot, expecting the community to contribute without the government doing so is simply not possible. Because after all, we are talking about finances and government expenditure, where the community can come in and really can help. Because today the biggest problem facing policy making in our country is the disconnect between outlays and outcomes. What we have, there is a prevalent thinking, and a very strong one, that the money that is being spent, and I'm not going into the issue of adequacy of the money spent. Leaving aside that question, even the money that is being spent is not really leading to results, adequate results. So now in our research, what we have understood that there are a number of constraints facing this translation of outlays into outcomes. When it comes to open data, I think the two most pertinent things is the centralization or the poor quality of decentralization of planning in our country, and the limited engagement of community, and hence weak accountability. Now, how can open data really help in it? The most important thing is when it comes to centralized planning. We all know that planning happens, and I'm not just talking about at the center or the national level. Even in the case of states, it happens in the state capitals or at the district headquarters. So what becomes important is when it comes to data, we need disaggregated data which the community can use. Now, what I mean by disaggregated data, if we go to districts and tell people that the state spends this percent on health, that's a policy issue, and that really is not very relevant for people. They do not really connect. What they're really interested in knowing is what is it that is available in my neighborhood? How much is the government spending in my neighborhood, in health centers, schools, or even the toilets that are being built? Then there's also the question of, are they usable? Are these facilities available to people and also functional? These are the kind of data that is important. So, where the community can come in, and I think that's where community participation will be very important, is the way the data is presented. When we are talking about open data, and I just mentioned, one, there's a tremendous lack of uniformity in the way the data is presented. Second is we have this extremely coded structure, which makes it difficult to understand budget data. So the way the data is presented, what we can do is we have a whole lot of civil society organizations that we also work with. Perhaps what can be done is to go down to people and ask, what is it that you want the data to show? And maybe since we can kind of involve them in generating the data, which can also be kind of validated by the government, because the government has the data. It's not as if they do not have it. It's just not made public. So this is one of the very important ways I think the community participation along with the government can be done. And this is a very important process. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll hand over to Sumandro. You can continue from where you left.
Okay, let us start talking about the workflow, right? Which is where the trouble lies, or the mines lie, as we have heard. Firstly, I think when we are talking about community contribution for this kind of a portal, there are two types of contribution we're talking about, right? One is community takes government data, cleans it up, makes it more useful, more directly useful, easily useful, and shares it back with the government or with everyone else. That's one type of data sharing. The other is data that is created to begin with by the agency concerned, the non-government agency concerned. So there is two type of things. For the former type, I'll say that an individual researcher, or even, not necessarily an academic researcher, can also be a person who is cleaning up data as part of his or her research process and wants to share it back. So when talking about non-government agencies putting data back into the portal, we are talking about two types of data contributors. One is an organization, one is an individual. In case of an organization, I understand when you're thinking of redoing the portal workflow, shifting from government agencies as data contributors to organizations plus individuals as data contributors. One problem is the part of who is putting in the data, who is assuring that the data can be put out in the name of the organization or the name of the person, thing like that. So I'll say, I'm offering very very quick solutions that are coming to my mind. Of course, please critique them and please modify them as it happens. For individuals, let individuals self-declare the validity or whatever legal text that needs to be signed on to for the data contribution to happen. In case of an organization, when an organization is registering on that portal, there's of course, like in the case of the open government data platform, you may ask for, say, 2 email addresses from the organization. One for the data controller or the chief data officer, and one for the representative of the organization as such. So you may say that chief data officer is the one responsible for contributing data, but the executive needs to give his or her agreement before the data is pushed out. So that's possibly a way of mirroring how it is happening, say in the case of government agencies.
So it's just the contrary, like in ours, in government it is the data contributors who are contributing, and it is the chief data officers who are actually approving.
Sorry. Okay, I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm not saying contrary, I'm saying the same. So you say that, yes.
Because here we are pushing the chief data officer itself. Suppose the organization NACO putting data, the whole sort of 100 people they are working. The data belongs to all of them. Why chief data officer is responsible? Why he is only answerable as you are asking to put his or her email address and one.
Because I'll still say.
So as far as data generator, data pushing, data uploading, chief data officer.
No, sir. I think there is some confusion. This is the community. Even in the community, he's wanting this sort of a setup. That community organization will also have a CDO. We'll not call him CDO. Maybe he will be some data manager. Maybe. And not that the CDO, not if he's putting health data, I don't think he says that CDO of health department is responsible. Certainly no way. So we
also in case of suppose some queries when this a lot of huge data is available by any organization, suppose as a general public I have some queries. So why only chief data should be answerable and he will be accountable to answer? Whole organization actually is responsible, just like RTI. One nodal officer is there. You just we are discussing for RTI also. So there are different RTI nodal officers in organization also. Otherwise, chief data officer is only compiler actually. Is not whole set of indicators. There are like in my organization there are 5 to 6 divisions. Blood safety is different. ICTs is different. Like ART division is different. So chief data officer is only generating and compiling the data. He is not aware what is happening and he cannot answer all the queries of the general public. This is just my submission actually. Thank you.
See, there is a problem. DP Misra started very well and presented well. That is what is to be done in this open data source parallel to the open government data source.
Right.
Yeah. But all the panel is mixed up and confused all the audience. The problem is let us stick to that one. Let us not bring in government data. Let us not bring in data, the manager or the controller. We have nothing to do with this one. Right. This is the open area. Whether we want to allow the open people to have a parallel, portal to facilitate those data. Now, before I think addressing these things, you should not move further because almost the whole audience is really perplexed.
This panel is only for...
This is for community, only for community. It's nothing to do with government. Yeah.
Community
Right.
Not bring in government budget. See, those are available in different sources.
No, actually because the nomenclature, we can have a different nomenclature. I think we are there for that.
Cannot be different. Nomenclature is very clear.
No.
Open government data that already be finished. This is
open community data.
Yes.
This is separate.
Yes.
So we would restrict to that one. If
Right.
you are interested.
Yes.
If you want to mix everything.
No, not at all.
No, in fact, I would like to point out.
Just let him finish, then we'll come back to the questions. Yeah, please can you just give some time? Yeah, let him finish, they will come back to the questions.
Whatever I'll talk about in this panel, even if I use the wrong nomenclature, I'm talking about data contributed by non-government agencies, not government agencies. Okay.
And none of the data controller, nothing to do with that.
nothing to do with any of you. Nothing to do with any of you, right?
Yeah, I think that gentleman is.
finish,
I'm afraid
you have not yet finished, right?
I'm afraid the canvas on which this panel is negotiating the discussion on this topic is not as cut and dried as is being made out. For example, Central Social Welfare Board distributes a lot of public funds to NGOs for doing work which originally was to have been done by line departments. They generate a lot of data. Now this is essentially data generated by community level organizations, but using public funding which may or may not turn up in the open government data portal. So how does one handle that? Who is going to be responsible for that data to be put up? Is that government data? Is that non-government data? Is one question. Second thing, I've been here since noon and we are discussing data in very abstract and value neutral terms. The current political situation that we find ourselves in this country, a lot of data is going to be generated with government support by non-government actors, which are probably detrimental if they were to be placed in the public domain, because they can have a conflagrant effect on society.
Absolutely.
And that is something that we need to be discussing in the context of quality of data as well.
Venkatesh, I would not respond to either of you. I'll just finish what I was going to say. I agree that what you're saying is absolutely important, but I also think that this panel is not to discuss that. So, but of course, anyone else will take up some of these questions, I'm sure. Give me 1.5 minutes, I'll just finish what I was going to say. I think it's a very good opportunity, this particular conversation now, to revive something that the NDSAP Project Management Unit was trying to create earlier on, which is sectoral communities of practitioners. This is, I think, becomes kind of a concrete area around which such communities can be created. And I completely echo what Professor Sarbadhikari said earlier, that, and also Nisha said earlier, that there is no way you can talk about quality, you can talk about managing not only quality in terms of the content, but also the form in which the data is coming in, without having community support or without having sectoral communities doing kind of an oversee of the data that is coming up in this portal. There is no way that work can be done by the NDSAP PMU. Like in the case of the data shared by government agencies, the NDSAP PMU ensures that the data is coming in certain format, under certain legal obligations, under a particular license. And I, of course, think that it should all be under license. Not only under license, if the data, for example, if the person or the organization sharing the data claims, so that the data is created by them, and it is found by someone else that the data is not created by them, then that organization should also be liable for lying, right? Apart from any other property-related cases that might be. So there must be a brief legal text which one is signing in when one is giving in the data. There should be a license related to this. This data cannot be used for commercial purpose, because there is no point community giving data, or rather government hosting community data which community then is commercially repurposing. That, I think, is completely absurd. That is not to say that, did I make myself clear? I mean that the license put in the data can allow for commercial use of the data. But say I'm a company, I'm an NGO, I'm saying that I'm hosting my data in the portal created by NDSAP PMU, and if you have to use that data, please pay me 50 rupees for each row. I think that kind of a possibility is completely out of the question. So this has to be open data. This has to be under open data license. This has to be open data format. There should be a legal disclaimer given by me that I have either created the data or have taken government data and cleaned it up. Value, even if not value added. But I'm saying that even if there is no value addition, for example, as you were saying, MOSPI has given a very nice table. I've taken the same table, put it up on this platform. I'll say it is not the responsibility of NDSAP PMU to take this judgment. Rather, what Professor Sarbadhikari, I think, mentioned, I think you, sir, also mentioned, that let's set up a discussion around these. So all these pages should have a discussion section where the particular practitioners community can ask questions, as you were suggesting, to the person or the organization who have given the data. And if you are if the NDSAP PMU as the administrator of the portal is seeing that a particular organization or individual is not systematically answering to anything, you can flag that person. You can say that you're not being nice in nature and we want you out of this portal. I'm done.
We ourselves think that in case such thing happens or such thing is built, then NDSAP PMU is only a technology
Provider of that app.
or maybe the platform provider. No term or no content is anyway should be responsible, lies on us. It has to be a social media kind of thing. Automatically these things to be done. If somebody is coming, then somebody should claim, maybe express his interest that I am going. Maybe we can keep some, there should be some committee or maybe volunteers who will vet that whether this data should, because they should be out of those community only. I don't think government in any way can be associated as far as content and data is hosted on that particular site.
Yeah, I just wanted
It is only whatever technology, whatever workflow, whatever thing is required and to be done, that is anyway we will be responsible and we should be doing it. But once that is open, it is all community.
Chairman sir, I have just one question.
Sure.
Let us go ahead, okay? But our friend Mr. Sumandro jumped 10 steps ahead. Okay, let us see very first
Right,
step,
right.
whether we qualify
Yes.
to host such a open data sources for community. That answer first, let us see yes or no. Then we can go step by step and all. Because it's
Right.
not like that. Alka ji or Mishra sir, if we want to have that kind of open thing, you should have parallel government at the national level. Tell me, just to take it very statistics, you talk about community, civil society, and industry, individuals, and all blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now let us go. You was chairman clearly told all the audience will all agree for the entire thing. You have the individual will take it 1.25 billion. You take it off, the children are offered about half a billion. Okay. Now industry you take it, there are million industries. And the community said that the trust and all you take it, there are about 3 million. Okay. And if these are only statistics at the raw level, unit level. Now coming to the subject expert, you have health, you have education, you have blah 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 blah. Now pollution somebody talked about. The pollution data, why that pollution authority has not put in their website? Precisely because there is some quality problem or they are not matching with their definitions, the international standard. When here we talk about, just I will give you a link, small thing, open government data. This data where we all see it, you just to put in that, we have to cross about 6 level. Scrutiny check, approval. Finally, secretary or most likely secretary or minister approval only, I can uplink. Whereas here, who is going to look after? What expertise you have, subject expertise you have. You have neither data, you have that subject expertise, then why to bring that floodgate to us and to put all these and you want to submerge? So let us think about very clearly and whether we can go ahead or not, whether we have resources to that one. To manage even government resources, to give one small example, you have NDSAP policy, bring it and all, and you have the e-office, you have so many, and how many people are adhering to that one? Have you checked up? Hardly 30% even within the government. When the case is like that, then when we talk about this billions of record or billions of individual to bring in here, where we don't have subject expertise, we don't have methodology, we don't have any statistics behind how they collect it, to put it here, suppose average income if we take it, you put all these people here average income, this is the highest of India. Can we put it, I claim my India average is something like 200,000. Can we say like that? How it will be misleading? And why you bring such a, there is a problem and we are just inviting the problem and we want to submerge here, why? So please answer this, then we'll go another step where our port, all this law, licensing, okay, modulation, and all we'll talk later.
Yes, sir, you very rightly said it. That is why, though the portal was up from 2012, we had kept this question down. We had not even let it out. But now the thing is, since the pressure was building quite a lot, and task force committee we had, in that task force committee also members from the community had risen this. So we had said, as a technology provider, we can provide the platform, because the platform is already available, which has been done. The platform could be extended, not merged. Definitely we are not looking for merging, because it will only cause confusion. So we can have a platform which says opencommunitydata.in, something like that, which is hosted somewhere, may not even be hosted on this instance and this framework. But even if we are ready to do that, we should have the framework that whom will we allow? Will we allow anybody to put, as you rightly said, taking the statistics itself, it's a huge number. Will it just allow garbage to come in? I'm not saying that the community is giving us, will be giving us garbage. For all you know, it might be very good data. But the thing is, are we in a position to account for that data? Certainly not. So what we were saying is that, okay, we'll give you the platform, another platform, separate platform, as you rightly said, a parallel platform. And now it's up to you, the community needs to tell us whether they want no approval, anyone just come put, and a big disclaimer is put there that this is community data. It is up to the end user to take that data or to use the government data. Something is available for you to decide. But then, or you want some approval, so also very rightly said, half the time the work is done by non-aggregated associations and institutes, then the framework has to be there. And now that might again take 2-3 months. Because definitely when we have not opened this discussion for the last 3 years, we can't come up with a solution overnight. So that is a thing that community inputs have to be taken. Our secretary needs to be in sync, and he should also agree. In the morning also you had heard that the secretary was saying, yes, we need to do it because community is doing some good work. Maybe Red Cross is doing a very good work in health, and which the health department may not have the wherewithal to put that data because they have got their own restriction. But how do we take that data? Where do we publish it? Who approves? Do we have the, authority that if public is saying, no, this is not the right data or things like that, can we withdraw it from the portal? All this needs to be worked out.
Perfectly, you made it wonderful, but only one small caution I want to give you.
Yes,
like
sir.
an extra space, so I cannot allow anybody to come and decide. You know, Indian Penal Code thing, if something goes wrong with the tenant, and you order, you have how much? Okay, you have to be answerable. Just to take that only caution I give, nothing else.
Thank you, sir. This caution will actually go a long way in making us, we kept 3 years to bring out the discussion. Maybe 6 months, now it will take instead of 3 months to come out with the legal framework. So, Sumandro, don't think that I'm discouraging, but I have to take the apprehensions and I have to listen to the experts who are much senior to me in expertise and in this field, and we would do it cautiously. That's why, sir, if you remember, I said that we will not go big bang way, that everything is open. We go in bits and chunks, maybe.
In fact, if I may add,
I'll come back to the panel. Just before that, if you look at mygov.in, that's a very good example where this is being tried. mygov.in, the comments supposed to come from 1.27 billion, but India has got internet access of less than 30% as of today. So that itself is a long way to go. Of course, mobile penetration is increasing, so we can hope. Yeah, but again, many people have 2 or 3. So that number is actually about half of that. That apart, it's a fact. It's working. Yes, there are outright abusers. There are moderated discussion forums. There are non-moderated. If it's moderated, abusers are usually not published. But most of the times, what happens, the moderation goes to some ministry, some department. The persons may or may not be active. So many of the times, the unmoderated things. So these are, again, the policy issues which we need to keep in mind. We need to, and I believe Sumandro was actually saying to that when that NDSAP PMU can probably act at that gateway, that see that this sort of thing doesn't happen. Not the content, but this sort of outright abuse. I'll come back to, Nisha wanted to say something.
Datameet is a community of about 1,400 people on a Google group across India. And we talk about and share and discuss data problems in India. And a lot of the conversation when NDSAP was first passed was that Indian data is not good enough to do all the things that people want it to do. It requires additional collection. It requires additional processing. It requires additional understanding. For instance, I worked a lot with the water and sanitation data from MDWS. It took 6 months to even understand what was in the data before we can even do anything, visualizations, all these other things with it. But once we understand which columns were really valuable to people who work in the civil society space, we took only those columns from the data sets, cleaned them up, and made them accessible to everybody on our website, indiawaterportal.org, right? We would like to give that data and that learning back to the government. Not necessarily to say this is how you should do it. The government collects data the way the government needs to collect data. You have requirements. No one is saying change your requirements. What we're saying is if you open data, the community will have new requirements or different requirements. And those are learnings for the government as well. So this platform was really the idea. And what's really fascinating about this platform is this is a conversation that is only happening in India. Because in the West, around open data, the government has tons of data. No one is going around patching data sets for the West. It's because in India, there are gaps that the government can't necessarily fill. And there are gaps that industry can't necessarily fill, right? We're approaching more of an impetus to create a data commons, to say that data has to go as a collective good, right? A fisherman will make money from the ocean, but he doesn't sell the ocean. He goes in and he fishes from the ocean and makes sure it's still healthy. He contributes back to it, right? And the data ocean is something that is really what we're talking about. And there are liabilities and there are problems that we can iron out, but it's the idea that we need to contribute back to what the government gives us, what we think is important as citizens, in a more formal manner, in a more open manner. On Datameet, lots of people share data with each other. Basically, an email goes out and says, I need this data set. I need that data set. Who has it? And people respond. They say, I had to clean that up for something. Oh, I did a research project with it. I'll give it. And it's usually they got it through RTI, or they have a personal connection, or they collected it themselves, or they, scraped the data or did whatever, right? And they're willing to share. And I think the issue that people are having a hard time with is that a separate portal, right, means that you're giving a lot of legitimacy to information from different sources. But I think if we look at it from a data commons point of view, legitimacy is an issue that the community, including the government is included in the community, can make an assessment for. You have the right to also say, this data is not good because it doesn't go along with what we are doing. Here's our methodology. Here's how we do it. This is our data. Your methodology is wrong for X, Y, and Z, and this is why we don't think that it should be legitimate. That is a legitimate conversation. And it's not something that we can just shy away from. It's okay to just call everyone's data terrible. All data is essentially terrible, but to say that you have a space that is equal, not necessarily the same in terms of heaviness, right? Like government data will always be more important to researchers, to other governments, to everything. I'm saying in the data narrative of India, where there's so much lacking, these are all the people that are contributing also to the pool. And it has an equal space, and the government is taking it seriously. So I think what the decision is who and what quality and how. I think accountability in the community site is very important. Obviously, logins and emails and et cetera have to be there, and ratings for the data set. But also, it's not a bad idea to see who in government is also collecting a similar type of data to the people who are doing it. And I'm not saying this is the government's responsibility to do, but this is an opportunity to connect also different outsiders and different people inside who are doing the same thing or trying to solve the same problem. So in terms of the portal for the community, we are sharing data already. People are cleaning up government data. People are collecting publicly data for a public interest that is now in private hands. While historically in the West, all of that data would be in the public hands, is not happening here. It's now being in private hands. To encourage the sharing of that to become a public good is something that this portal can initiate, and is something that's already happening. So giving structure to it and allowing the government to say, we also are part of the community, but you have to follow some rules is not a bad thing. Something we're also willing to participate in.
In fact, I'd like to add to what Nisha said. This is a very important venture, but I also agree with you that data can be of different kinds. So maybe one of the ways or solution could be that whoever puts in their data, they give very clear indications of what is the methodology followed, what are the methods there, where have they taken the data from, and we also have subjects, experts, actually looking at the data before it is finally put up. So that this whole question of, putting up spurious data, because spurious data can be extremely damaging. And this whole, putting up such a portal could actually get damaged simply because you have data which is questionable. So therefore, to have these quality checks is very important, and to be done by, there can be various methods, some of them which I mentioned. If we can do that, definitely it actually adds to what the government has been doing, because there are a lot of people who are actually working on collecting data. And, of course, the whole population does not collect the data. And there are a lot of people who are actually experts and doing this data. So we can actually make committees or bodies which looks into these things, authenticate the data. That can be one way of, one solution to it.
I just want to say, actually, we have to be very clear when we are putting this data. Whether we are information or resource center. Suppose, for example, I am providing the list of facilities in my village, and it is available on my portal. These are the testing facilities for blood testing, example. And suppose one person goes, read that this is the facility, he went there and it is not open for 5 days. So whether he is going to write that this is the misleading data which is provided by the my.gov.in. So we have to be very clear, I am telling you, that we are not accountable because you see there are so huge data. So it's a very, as you said, subject approval from subject experts are to be taken. It's a continuous process. It's a very difficult process. So much of data, and I don't know how much this NIC can do it. So accountability, if it is to be there, then people will be afraid to put in data to mygov.in. Solution should be, I don't know what is the objective of this, that we can give the, suppose some complaint comes or some suggestions come from the public, then it can be given to the person who has uploaded the data, so that they can mutually discuss. Only that, as sir said, this is the technology which we can fulfill the bridge, the gap between the general public and between the government. This should be the, I think, otherwise we are talking to the accountability and what will happen, then it will be endless job. It is a resource center, I think. We should provide n number of, just like Google, so many, otherwise every department has website, madam. Every department is having website which is having whole lot of data which is available, which is not available in gov.in, I am telling you. So I don't know whether we are really discussing accountability at length, or whether we are interested in giving resource centers information to the public. That is what my submission is.
No, that exactly is the job of the community. I mean, these are the things, and that's how data gets purified. We'll take another question there, and I think another 2, 3. So that side, we'll take the questions, yeah. We have some written questions as well. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, and mine will be the last intervention for the day. I'm sorry that there is an impression that is going out here, perhaps because of the composition of the audience here, that a large number of government policies are changed because of government-generated data and what it is pointing out. I'm sorry, that is not true. And the greatest example of that was the manner in which public opinion was built in favor of amending the land acquisition law in this country. The data that was used and displayed in the economic survey that was presented before Parliament was not government generated data. It was data that was purchased by the government of India using taxpayer funds from a private organization and used in a manner to push a political agenda. It is only because of the Right to Information Act that we were able to get the database of 804 projects where it was clearly shown by the private agency that less than 10% of the project had stalled because of land acquisition problems. I completely support what Nisha has been saying, that the discussion has to be democratized. The display of data, the collection of data must be democratized, but I completely agree with what the NIC team has been saying, that let the government not take the responsibility for the accuracy of it. You can always put in a disclaimer, however strongly you want to word it, saying that we are not responsible for the accuracy, use it at your own risk. As simple as that.
Yeah, please pass the mic on the right. Yeah.
One point that I want to make is that when we're talking about the quality of data and the authenticity of data being provided by the community, then I would say that whatever checks and balances that we are foreseeing that it should be put, whether it's through a review by a subject expert or whatsoever, but then the same checks should also be put up on the government data. I mean, I've been informed here that there are several levels of scrutiny that's been done, from the source to, till it is finally put up. But still, when we use open data or government data, we find a lot of discrepancies. So what are the checks and balances that should be common for both? I mean, it should be there for both. I mean, it's equally important for the community data as well as for the government data. Thank you.
Actually, at the same point, but just to add on to that, that when we're talking about contribution from the community, it's not just because they're doing great work, but also because there's a need for it. Because we have compared at multiple times the data from the open source and from a right to information informations, and we realize that there has been discrepancies. So there's a need to have a counter information as well to see so that the quality of the data which exists improves. So.
There, I would just like to add, sir, if I can. Please. I would just like to add, you talked about, checks and balances for the government data which is being put up. I just wanted to tell you what we were trying to say is not that to check for its authenticity. The check is basically anyone and everyone cannot put it. So they are nominated chief data officers who are very, very senior officers. I do agree that he has got n number of activities and he cannot know it very well. So to assist him, he has got contributors who are again senior officers in different divisions, department, different sections of his organization. So they know data, they know what has to go, what doesn't have to go as per the NDSAP policy. Once the data is contributed, the chief data officer again verifies that yes, it is all right to be published, only then it gets published. Now coming to the quality of data, you know that this field is evolving and it is a very good way of opening up data, and it is not to criticize that your data is good or bad, but there are a whole lot of community participation which helped in correcting few of the data. It was not that the data was put wrong or erroneous or people were shying away, the government didn't want to do it, but once it was brought to the notice, I will even name you the organization, MOSPI, had shown some 1956's data which was incorrect. They immediately pulled it out, got back to the ISI Institute in Calcutta, saw that it was rectified, it was a typo error or an analysis error, and they put it back. So this is where we say that community plays an important role in even improving a quality. The quality, it is not that the government is giving bad quality or is not putting checks, but it could be an error. And they can even connect to the chief data officers in case you feel that some data needs more clarification, or you think like she was telling that the data, Madhumita was saying that the data you cannot understand the code. Very right, it is codified, so each code has a different meaning, but you could get back to the chief data officers right from the platform. Again, I am not saying that he will reply immediately in 24 hours. That is not there, but it is not thrown away. It definitely is in his system, and as soon as he has a ready-made answer for you, either he gets it corrected or he gives it back, but there is a mechanism to connect you with the department.
Many instances, many of the data sets are corrected and published and acknowledged to the person who has identified the problem.
I want to put one thing, that in the non-government organizations, means community data. Now, as far as government is concerned, there is many CCS conduct rules and so many things the officer is bound with. But it can happen that community can give a data of a biased type, and the whole community is biased towards, as so you see in WhatsApp, so many things are coming, and then it becomes biased towards one political things or towards one kind of situation, they becomes biased. Now, is the NIC has thought of any defender for their platform? That the community should correct the community. Means, if the other community is telling that this data is not coming properly, will they analyze it, that so many hits have come that this data is not coming properly? So they should have an interface in between their platform and the community, so that they can see that this data is not being properly presented on the web, is not properly coming. So they can have like that. Is the NIC thinking?
Yeah, I think I'll come to you in a different way. In fact, Wikipedia had this problem in a big way. In fact, it still has. So they advocate the NPOV, neutral point of view. Of course, there cannot be any neutral point of view for anything at all. So what happens when certain, like, I mean, if you look at the Wikipedia article page on George Bush, that is a closed page because there were so huge edit wars from both the sides, his followers as well as his opposers, that they had to stop it. So, I mean, sometimes, I mean, usually that extreme step need not be taken, but yes, exactly that's what's happening. So when you have a community, you have the self-correcting mechanisms. In fact, we have had actually quite an engrossing session, and we have actually covered the hour. So I think I'd rather wind it up here. So I'll just sum up what's happened. Essentially, I think everyone would agree that there is a need for getting data from the community, but there's also a need to see that it is authentic, it is validated, as you said, neutral, that is dependable. So how to do that? That requires a lot of thinking. We need to have not just one-hour panel session to settle on those. We need lots of discussions, and I believe a subcommittee has been formed for that, which will deliberate on that, where your views would also be sought, no doubt about it, because that's usually the way here the committees happen. So if there's some note put out probably in the public domain, again, comments from the public would be sought. Based on that, there would be revisions. And the moment it starts, it may not start functioning the ideal way. In fact, if you look at mygov.in exactly, I mean, mygov.in has also evolved a very long way. When it started initially, and then right now the way it is functioning, it's very different. So obviously, evolution is only very natural. There will be an evolution, but I believe we all agree that we need to do a start. For doing a start, we need to have our basics clear, some minimum requirements, which we'll fix, discuss with you, come back to you. And then once it starts, only after it starts, we'll actually get to know more loopholes we are not foreseeing right now. So then we'd learn, evolve, and go forward. So thank you all. Over to Madam for the concluding remarks.
Thank you, sir. You summed it up very well, but I'd just like to inform everyone that mygov.in has also been developed by the same team here, NIC, and by the same team. So the team members are also same, and we've had 1.5 years of struggle and nightmare. But yes, since it is a push from the top, it has taken up very fast. And we are having crowdsourcing, and we are getting a lot of feedback from the crowd. Difficult to filter, but we leave that to the departments to take a call. and it has been successful. Crowdsourcing is definitely successful, but data is something very sensitive and important, so we need to take a little bit of caution and definitely not close, but work with caution. I would just like to thank each and every person here today attending this workshop. It has been very, very enlightening workshop, and the chairman of this session especially took a very nice role of summing up and giving us the hope that yes, we should have the community data, but with caution, which I have taken from Sir there and every other experienced person. We were really happy to find so many people from the community. Sorry that we had to keep you in the afternoon session, because morning was all sectoral data and data. I wish we could have you even that time, but because of the space constraint and things like that, we couldn't do it. And I would like to thank each one of you for spending so much of time and being a part of this movement. We will definitely come back in maybe 3 to 4 months with some framework. Again, I will not say a framework which will be complete in all ways, especially for the 2 panel discussions, open government data use license or terms, whatever it is. And the second thing is community contribution. How will we go about? What should we do? What should be the framework? Whom to take? Which name to go with? It's definitely not going to be open government data. Definitely. Though we had thought we'll have a community section there, we had did a lot of internal deliberations, and we felt that it will be something like maybe open data, open community data or something like that. The nomenclature will anyway sit together and work out. I would like to thank each one for sparing your time. But on behalf